Welcome back to Aisha Stories. We love having you here. Before we get started, please kindly subscribe and turn on the notification icon so we can bring you more amazing stories. Noise filled the air as traders shouted over each other, pulling at the attention of anyone who walked past. The smell of roasted corn mixed with the sharp scent of fish being sold by women with strong voices and quick hands. Cars honked non-stop, fighting for space on the narrow road beside the market under the bridge. Amora moved through the crowd, clutching her small bag tightly. Her face carried that tired look of someone used to long days that barely paid off. She had been selling fruits since morning, and all she had left were a few oranges rolling around in her tray. Every day felt the same, yet she kept waking up at 4 a.m., hoping that maybe things would change. "Fine girl, buy plantain now," a woman called out to her. Amora smiled faintly, shaking her head as she stepped around a puddle. She didn't have money to spend. In fact, she barely had money for her transport back to the tiny room she shared with two other girls in a rundown building. A Danfo screeched to a stop close to her, the conductor yelling the route as passengers hurried to get in. She ignored it and kept walking. Deep down, she wanted more than this. She wanted to escape this market, this endless hustle that never seemed to reward anyone. A group of boys ran past, laughing as they carried stolen bananas from a distracted trader's table. The trader shouted and tried to chase them, but they were too fast. Amora turned away. Scenes like this were normal here. People did what they had to do to survive. As she reached the edge of the market, she stopped for a moment. She stared at the cars rushing by on the road. Among the rusty buses and old taxis, sleek cars sometimes drove past. She always wondered what kind of lives the people inside those cars had. They looked untouchable, like they lived in another world entirely. Her phone buzzed inside her bag. She fished it out. It was a message from her friend Kimi, a girl she met in the market months ago. "Amora, come see me tonight. I have something for you. It might change everything." Amora frowned. Kimi wasn't one to send such messages. What could she possibly mean by that? Later that evening, the market had quieted down. Most traders had packed their goods. Amora sat on a low stool, her empty tray by her feet, waiting for Kimi. The air was cooler now, but the noise of Lagos never really stopped. Cars still honked, music blasted from a nearby shop, and people still argued over change. Kimi finally appeared, her face glowing with excitement. She looked different, almost out of place in her fitted dress and fresh braids that clearly cost money. "You look, wow," Amora said, standing up. "Babe, sit down. I have gist for you," Kimi replied, her eyes darting around as if making sure no one was listening. Amora sat again, curious. Kimi leaned closer. "There's a way out of this. I met someone. He said he can change my life. Babe, you see where I'm staying now? It's not this market life anymore. I don't even touch this hustle again." Amora stared at her, confused. "What are you talking about? What do you mean someone can change your life?" Kimi smiled slowly. "There's a place, Amora. Banana Island. Have you heard of it?" Amora laughed bitterly. "Banana Island? That's for rich people. People like us can never." Kimi cut her off. "Stop that. Listen to me. There are people who can take you there. But you have to be ready to do what it takes. I'm serious. You think I got this hair from selling groundnuts?" Amora felt a chill run through her. She knew Kimi was different now. She also knew that this was no small talk. Whatever Kimi was about to tell her could really change everything. For the first time in a long while, hope and fear mixed inside her. She wanted to know more, yet part of her was scared of the answer. Kimi touched her arm gently. "Meet me tomorrow. I'll show you. But you have to decide fast. Opportunities like this don't wait." Amora looked at her friend, speechless. All she could hear was her own heartbeat as Kimi stood up to leave, her perfume lingering in the air. As Amora watched her friend walk away, She felt like she was standing at the edge of something huge, something she didn't understand yet. That night, lying on the thin mattress in her cramped room, Amora couldn't sleep. Her roommates were already snoring, but her eyes stayed open, staring at the dark ceiling. Banana Island. The words played over and over in her mind. Morning came too fast. Amora opened her eyes to the sound of a baby crying in the next room and the loud voice of the landlord's wife shouting at someone in the corridor. The room was stuffy, and the small fan by her bed only moved warm air around. She sat up slowly, her hair messy, her thoughts even messier. Kimi's words from the night before kept replaying in her head. Banana Island. A place she had only seen in pictures and on TV. A place she never thought she would ever step foot in. She dragged herself out of bed, washed her face in a plastic bowl of water, and stared at her reflection in the small cracked mirror. Her eyes looked tired. Her lips were dry. She looked like someone who had spent years trying and failing. But deep down, there was a spark. The idea that life could be more than this small room, more than the endless days at the market, was both terrifying and exciting. By noon, Amora was back at the market. The sun was high, and the heat made everything feel heavier. She sold oranges with the same tired smile, her mind far away from the present moment. Every time she saw a nice car pass by, her chest tightened. Was it really possible to cross that invisible line between her world and theirs? Kimi arrived later in the day. She wasn't carrying any tray. No fruits, no goods to sell. She just looked like she didn't belong here anymore. Heads turned as she walked through the market. People whispered, "Babe, are you ready?" Kimi asked as soon as she got close. Amora nodded slowly. Ready for what? To see the life I've been telling you about. Today, you'll see with your own eyes. They left the market together. Kimi led the way, walking fast as if she was scared of being stopped. They got to a street corner where a sleek black car waited. The windows were tinted, and it looked completely out of place in this part of Lagos. "Enter," Kimi said, opening the back door. Amora hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The air conditioning hit her skin immediately. She had never sat in a car this nice. The leather seats, the faint smell of expensive cologne. It all felt unreal. A man sat in the front passenger seat, dressed sharply in a white shirt. He didn't turn around, but his voice was calm and deep. "So, this is Amora?" "Yes," Kimi replied, her tone suddenly respectful. The man nodded slightly. "Good. We'll talk more when we get there." The driver started the engine, and the car moved smoothly through the rough roads, away from the market. Amora looked out of the window as the scenery began to change. The noise and chaos of her everyday life slowly faded behind her. As they drove further, Amora noticed how different everything looked. Wide roads, cleaner streets, big houses that seemed like another world entirely. She pressed her hand against the cool glass, almost as if to confirm it was real. "Where exactly are we going?" she finally asked, her voice small. "You'll see," Kimi said with a sly smile. After a long drive, the car stopped in front of a tall gate guarded by security men. The gate opened after a brief exchange, and the car rolled inside. Amora's heart pounded as she stared at the surroundings. Beautiful houses with perfect lawns, fancy cars parked in driveways. Everything looked like a dream. They drove deeper inside until they stopped in front of a massive white house. It was the kind of house Amora had only seen in magazines. When she stepped out of the car, she could barely breathe. The air felt different here. Quiet, clean, almost too peaceful compared to the life she knew. A woman in a fitted dress opened the door to welcome them. She was tall, elegant, and carried herself like she owned the world. "You're Amora?" she asked, her voice smooth. "Yes, Ma," Amora replied nervously. The woman smiled. "Come inside. We've been expecting you." Inside, everything sparkled. The marble floor, the huge chandelier, the expensive furniture. It was overwhelming. Amora had never seen such beauty in real life. "Sit down," the woman said, gesturing to a cream-colored sofa. Amora sat carefully, afraid she might stain something. Kimi sat beside her, looking completely at ease. The man from the car walked in, now without his sunglasses. He looked powerful, the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to command respect. "This is the life you've been dreaming of," he said, standing in front of Amora. "But everything comes with a price." Amora's mouth went dry. She glanced at Kimi, who only gave her a reassuring smile. The man continued, "I can take you far from that market. I can give you more than you've ever imagined. But you must be ready to leave that old life behind. No going back." Amora swallowed hard. "What do I have to do?" The man's lips curved slightly, like he had been waiting for that question. "You'll see," he said softly. He turned to Kimi. "Prepare her. Tomorrow, everything begins." That night, Amora stayed in a guest room bigger than her entire house. The bed was soft, the sheets smelled fresh, and there was even a TV fixed on the wall. She should have felt happy, but her heart raced. She stood by the window, staring out at the quiet streets. From up here, the city lights sparkled in the distance. It looked beautiful, but also far away, like the life she once knew was already disappearing. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure if she was ready for what she had just stepped into. But deep down, she knew there was no turning back. Amora woke up to the soft hum of the air conditioning and the smell of fresh bread drifting in from the corridor. For a moment she didn't know where she was. Then it all came back. Last night, the man, the house, the promise of a new life. She sat up slowly on the enormous bed, her bare feet sinking into the plush rug as she stood. The room was too perfect, too quiet. She washed up in the sparkling bathroom, touched her face in the mirror, and barely recognized herself. She looked cleaner, softer, almost like someone who belonged here. A knock came at the door. "It's me," Kimi's voice called out. Amora opened the door. Kimi stepped in holding a shopping bag. She looked excited, almost proud. "Today is your first day. You can't be looking like market girl anymore," Kimi said, pulling out a silky dress, a pair of heels, and a small box of makeup. Amora touched the fabric. It felt expensive, smooth against her skin. "Kimi, are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice trembling. Kimi sat on the bed, crossing her legs casually. "Amora, you've been struggling for too long. You think success comes easy? This is your chance. Don't mess it up. Everything is about to change." After dressing up, Amora barely recognized the person staring back at her in the mirror. The dress hugged her figure perfectly, the heels made her stand taller, and the light makeup made her look like she belonged in this house. When they walked downstairs, the man from yesterday was already seated in the living room. He looked her up and down, his expression unreadable. "Better," he said simply. "You look like someone who knows where she's going." He gestured for her to sit. She obeyed quietly, her hands clasped tightly together. "You're going to meet people today," he said. "Important people. How they see you matters. If you impress them, doors will open. Big doors." Amora nodded, unsure of what to say. "You will be with Kimi the whole time. Watch her. Learn from her. If you do well, life as you know it will be gone forever. Are you ready?" Amora hesitated for a moment, then whispered, "Yes." "Good," he said, standing up. "Let's go." The car ride felt different this time. Amora wasn't just staring out the window in shock anymore. She was alert, watching everything, trying to understand this world she was stepping into. They arrived at a large building with glass walls that reflected the sun. The inside was even more impressive. Huge chandeliers, expensive art on the walls, people dressed in outfits that screamed money. Kimi leaned close and whispered, "Smile. Don't look scared. Confidence is everything." They entered a private lounge where several men and women sat around a polished table, drinking wine and laughing softly. The man introduced Amora like she was the newest star in town. Their eyes scanned her, curious and calculating. A tall woman with diamond earrings reached out her hand. "You're beautiful. Where have you been hiding?" Amora forced a small smile. "Thank you, Ma." Laughter rippled around the table. Drinks were poured. Conversations flowed about things Amora barely understood. Deals, travels, investments. She stayed quiet, nodding whenever someone looked at her. After a while, the man leaned in and whispered something to one of the guests. The guest, a distinguished-looking man in a grey suit, turned to Amora. "So, you're the one everyone's been talking about," he said with a small smile. "Stand up. Let me look at you." Amora stood slowly, her knees slightly weak. "Lovely," he said finally, his gaze never leaving her. "You'll do just fine." The man from the house smiled knowingly. "Like I told you, she's special." The evening blurred into moments Amora would never forget. She was given attention she had never experienced before. Compliments, laughter, soft whispers in her ear, expensive wine placed gently in her hand. Hours later, as they drove back, Amora sat silently in the car, her heart pounding. She didn't understand everything that had happened, but she knew one thing: she had been chosen. Back at the house, Kimi turned to her. "You see? This is only the beginning. But from today, your life is no longer your own. Remember that." Amora lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling. Her room felt bigger than ever, yet she felt smaller inside. She could still hear their voices, their laughter, the way they looked at her like she was something to be owned. For the first time, she realized she was stepping into a life that wasn't just about money or pretty dresses. It was about power, control, and a world where people like her were either swallowed whole or turned into something unrecognizable. Sleep finally came, but it was uneasy. Outside her window, Banana Island looked calm, beautiful, untouchable. But Amora was starting to see the cracks behind the perfect picture. The next morning, Amora woke up earlier than usual. The room was quiet, but her mind wasn't. She sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the polished floor, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. Everything around her was perfect, yet it felt too heavy, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Kimi walked in without knocking, holding a tray with breakfast, toast, scrambled eggs, and fresh juice in a tall glass. "Eat," Kimi said, placing the tray on the table. "Today will be even bigger than yesterday." Amora shook her head slowly. "Kimi, I don't know if I can do this." Kimi's brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" It feels wrong. I don't even know who I'm becoming." Kimi sat beside her, her tone sharp but caring. "Listen, Amora. We grew up with nothing. We've suffered. How many years will you keep selling oranges for 50 naira profit? You've seen the other side now. You can't just walk away. Nobody walks away." Those last words sank deep. Nobody walks away. Later that day, the man summoned Amora to his office. It was a large room with glass walls that looked out over the pristine neighborhood. He stood by the window with a glass of wine in his hand, his back to her. "You did well yesterday," he said finally. "Thank you, sir," Amora replied softly. He turned around, his eyes locking on hers. "I gave you a taste of what this life can offer. But this world has no room for hesitation. If you want to stay, you have to make sacrifices. You have to belong fully." Amora swallowed hard. "And if I don't want to?" His lips curved into a small, cold smile. "Then you lose everything. And believe me, you won't like what happens after that." A chill ran down her spine. She realized she wasn't just being offered a new life, she was being trapped in it. That evening, there was another gathering. More expensive wine, more wealthy strangers, more eyes watching her every move. Amora smiled when she was supposed to, laughed softly when someone said something amusing, and pretended she was comfortable. But inside, she felt like she was disappearing. One of the men leaned close to her, speaking low. "You're special. Don't waste this chance. People would do anything to be where you are." She forced a polite smile, but her hands trembled slightly on her lap. Hours later, after the guests left, Amora found herself outside by the pool. The water shimmered under the lights, calm and inviting. She sat at the edge, hugging her knees, her mind racing. Kimi joined her, barefoot, holding her heels in her hands. She sat beside her, dipping her toes in the water. "You're quiet," Kimi said softly. "I don't know if I can live like this," Amora whispered. Kimi exhaled deeply, looking at the ripples in the pool. "I thought the same thing once. But after a while, you stop thinking about it. You just exist. And you enjoy what you can." "But what if I want more than just existing?" Amora asked, her voice breaking slightly. Kimi turned to her slowly. "Then you'll have to fight. But know this, Amora, people like him don't let you go easily. The moment you stepped inside that car, you stopped being free." The words hit her like a heavy blow. That night, lying in the huge bed that once felt like a dream, Amora made a decision. She didn't want to be just another girl in a pretty dress who lost herself in exchange for comfort. She wanted freedom, even if it meant losing everything. Days passed. Amora played along, smiling when she needed to, doing what was expected of her. But inside, she was planning. She observed everything, when the guards changed shifts, which doors were locked and which weren't, how people came and went from the house. One night, when the house was quieter than usual, Amora quietly packed a small bag. Her hands shook as she placed a few clothes inside. She knew what she was about to do could destroy her life, or save it. She opened her door slowly, her bare feet silent on the marble floor. The hallway stretched ahead, dimly lit. She moved quickly, avoiding the creaky spots she had memorized over the past days. When she reached the back exit, her heart pounded so loudly she was afraid it would wake the whole house. She turned the knob gently. It opened. Outside, the air was cool, the night silent except for the distant hum of the city. She ran barefoot across the lawn, her bag clutched tightly. She didn't stop running until she was far enough to see the bright lights of the main road ahead. Her legs ached, her chest burned, but she didn't care. For the first time since she stepped into that world, she felt alive. When she finally flagged down an old taxi, she climbed inside, gasping for breath. "Where you day go?" the driver asked, looking at her in the mirror. Amora paused for a moment. Then she whispered, "Anywhere far from here." As the taxi drove off, Amora looked back one last time. The houses of Banana Island stood tall and perfect behind her, but she knew what lived inside them. She turned her face to the road ahead. The city stretched endlessly before her, noisy, messy, alive. And for the first time, she felt like she had a chance to start over, on her own terms. Thanks for watching Aisha Story Lovers. Kindly let us know the country you are watching from and what your time says right now. We love you.